Birthright citizenship has its day at the Supreme Court tomorrow. People are already lining up to hear the arguments about one of President Trump's day one executive orders.
Our country is being scammed. We're getting all of these people. They're selling the rights to them. People are making a big living, getting hundreds of thousands and even millions of dollars from bringing people in and saying, congratulations, your whole family is going to be a citizen of the United States of America.
Joining us now is Texas Congressman Brandon Gill. Congressman, it's great to have you tonight. All right, lay out for us what you think is going to happen, maybe in terms of the main line of argument, but particularly in terms of the outcome. Could we see a huge shift in the way this country thinks about citizenship?
Well, I certainly hope so, and I hope that the Supreme Court strikes down this ludicrous idea that anybody who crosses our borders, whether you flew in from China all the way on the other side of the globe or just immediately cross the southern border, can have a child and have an anchor in the United States who is a United States citizen. You know, the Supreme Court in American constitutional law has long held that not everybody who is born on American soil is in fact an American citizen. For instance, the children of diplomats, Native American children, to tribes who still have tribal relations, the children of an invading army, of course, would not be considered and never have been considered American citizens. And I think that that logic applies here whenever you have somebody who crossed the border illegally, is not subject to the laws of the United States, and that's a key term here. Remember, the 14th Amendment says subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And that means that not only are you subject to our laws, but you have complete and total allegiance to the United States, which of course does not apply to illegal aliens or their children. That is the constitutional basis that's being argued here. And I think that most people can recognize that it's not only constitutionally unsound to commit to birthright citizenship to somebody who, a mother whose child just crossed the border, or somebody who flew across, from China or somewhere else, but it's just absolutely asinine.
Congressman, in terms of the justices, I know Brian and I will both be listening to the arguments tomorrow. In terms of the justices, the conservative justices, who should we most closely listen to tomorrow in their questioning?
Yeah, you know, I think I like to listen to all of the conservative justices. I think Alito is going to be one to particularly watch here. Of course, if Clarence Thomas does decide to weigh in, and he oftentimes doesn't, but if he does, he's usually particularly insightful. But I would be listening across the board. I think that the president and his team have a very strong case here. And I think it's going to be one that, I hope, again, that the Supreme Court does agree with.
You know, sometimes you get these big cases and we anticipate an earth-changing decision, and then you get something that feels more like a technicality, right? And you're like, hey, wait a second, you didn't really rule on the big thing. Is there any chance of that in this case here?
Well, it's hard to predict what the Supreme Court is going to say to that with that specificity. To your point, there's always some hyper nuanced subject that they could latch on to. But I think that the overarching picture that not everybody who just immediately crosses the border doesn't adhere to our laws, does not have allegiance to our country, it can all of a sudden have a child in the United States paid for by American taxpayers who is a citizen, I think is something that does not withstand honest and straightforward constitutional scrutiny.
We want to get your reaction to this. A federal judge has blocked the Trump administration from ending federal funding to PBS and NPR, and yet another, judicial overreach in terms of the Trump administration. So throw this in with the big, beautiful ballroom that the president is trying to build.
Well, you know what? We defunded NPR and PBS and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting last year in a rescission bill. So it doesn't matter what some unelected Obama-appointed judge thinks about that. The money's not going to them, at least not in the long term, and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting has already been shut down. I know the left is furious about that, because so much of their political movement was based on the fact that they could launder American tax dollars into media outlets that would parrot their talking points. Nevertheless, that money's not coming back. We defunded it, and we're not going to refund it.
If the left is furious about NPR and PBS, imagine how they're going to react if you get a ruling from the Supreme Court that birthright citizenship goes away. I don't even want to contemplate that in some ways, but we're going to be watching carefully. Congressman, thanks for your legal analysis tonight. We appreciate it, and we will follow it closely. Thanks very much, sir. Good to see you.